Welcome to the Groove Pod, where two cousins and lovers of music explore their journeys through audio and listening to music, and specifically explore whether or not it's worth going down the path of vinyl in this digital age. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the show. This is episode number 6 we're up to now, which is kind of cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, we're moving out of the rookie stage. I don't know if it's over the hump, but we've got some listeners.
I wonder how many
so that's
podcasts.
Good.
Yeah, like what's the number before? Most podcasts only get to like 4 episodes and they die.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm just wondering if we're beyond that stat.
That would be interesting to know. It'd be very interesting to know, but I have no idea what the number is. And I just mentioned that we have listeners now, and on the note of having listeners, we even had our first ever email, which I think is awesome. So we will attend to that email as the episode goes on. But shall we kick off, Nick? You were going to talk about cartridges a little bit, so we might start with some very turntable-centric stuff. So hit us with some cartridge knowledge, Nick.
Well, one day I'll stop saying this, but that day is not today. I'm not an expert. I am not an expert. Sometimes I'm quite good at sounding like I know what I'm talking about, but I'm really just sort of consuming a lot of this information minutes before we go to air. But yes, so I'm in the process of trying to work out how to improve, or can I improve, or should I improve the equipment that I have to play my vinyl records. Listeners will remember that I have the Audio Technica ATLP60 USB, which confusingly has a built-in crappy black RCA cable, which is somehow sort of non-removable, or at least not removable without some sort of soldering skills. And that's actually something I did want to talk about. I don't know if this episode, but I found a couple of I think they're Reddit posts or other blogs of people that have actually opened theirs up, and they've cracked out the soldering iron. Cracked out? No, what have they done? They've what's the verb there? They've broken out the soldering iron,
whipped out.
They've whipped it out. Oh gosh, let's go with cracked out. No, neither of those. Both those are bad. They have procured a soldering iron, and they have unscrewed the casing to their record player, and they've gone about removing that crappy cable and adding in some RCA outs and some proper grounding. So that's something I might be interested in tackling at some point. That feels fun. It also feels a little bit dangerous. I'm not really a great solderer, so it feels like the risk reward there might that calculus might be a bit off. But anyway, styluses or cartridges. And so the way that I'm thinking about this journey that we're on is, for me, the sweet spot's about $50 for everything, right?
Okay.
So that's just my starting point. So to replace the cartridge, I think I want to spend about $50. I don't really, coming into this, I'm not sure if that's even realistic. I don't know if you can get something $50. Turns out you do.
Okay.
But that's sort of my starting point. I am talking $50 US. As we are recording this, I believe the Australian dollar is buying a fraction.
About 3 cents.
But let's just stick with that. We'll see what happens.
So I think that would roughly equate to about 80 to 90 Australian dollars for those here in Aussie land.
Right. Yes. And so I went to my good friend Chad, also known as ChatGPT, and basically asked for a comparison table of common, popular vinyl cartridges that would be compatible with my record player. And I initially sort of said, let's stick under $200 just to sort of see where that goes. Chad isn't perfect yet. I think people that have been playing around with AI will know that you have to refine your prompts. And
I have a fantastic story to share with you about that. We'll park that one and I'll come back to it. It's completely not audio related, but I think it's hilarious. So
awesome. Well, because I asked for a stylus, for cartridges under $200, and the table that it spat out went up to $1,200.
There's a 2 in it,
and started at $70. So that was sort of interesting. Not a great output, but like I think you're the one that mentioned it in a couple episodes before. So there's the two sort of primary types of cartridges, especially on the lower end, are moving coil and moving magnet, and in a very rudimentary sense, they're sort of an inverse of each other. You have you're trying to generate an electrical signal, and so you either have a magnet that goes in between sort of ferrous material to generate that electrical signal, or you have ferrous material that moves in between of the magnet. And you're just basically, those two cartridge types are, one's got the magnet is fixed and the piece of metal that goes in between it moves, and the other one is the piece of metal is fixed and the magnet is what goes up and down to generate that signal. And initially I was like, really, that can't really make that much of a difference. Can that make much of a difference? Turns out it can make a lot of difference.
A lot of difference.
or at least there are many people out there, many companies out there dedicated to trying to extract and isolate all those differences in certain ways.
And just as a quick note on that topic, a very quick note, my experience with audio over the years is that everything can make a difference. It's crazy.
Everything.
Even I've talked to Gino, who's the designer behind the Geshelli Labs audio products. They make DACs, headphone amps, and even a speaker amp. And he was saying that even swapping the order of components in a circuit so that the components are all exactly the same, but putting that resistor before that transistor instead of after it, or whatever it was. I don't know what the components were he was talking about, but literally swapping the order of the components but not changing the components can make a difference to the sound. So anything is possible in audio. It's a crazy space. So anyway, back to you, Nick.
I just realized that I was saying sort of ferrous material. I believe that is actually, there is actually a cartridge type called moving iron, which is literally a chunk of iron between magnets and coils. That's not what I was referring to. I was referring to moving coils and moving magnets. And that is where you have a coil and a magnet. One of them's fixed, one of them moves, and the other way it's reversed. As I just sort of prefixed, not an expert here, sort of learning as we go. But initially I thought this has to be 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But no, it's interesting. So the moving magnet is generally, apparently, seen as having slightly less detail than moving cartridge.
Moving cartridge.
Well, okay, let me
mind blown. Tell us more.
Well, so, again, there's a lot of very rudimentary early research here. But let me just sort of read what I've sort of pulled together from a little bit of ChatGPT prompting, a little bit of Wikipedia reading. Here is that in a moving magnet cartridge, the stylus moves a magnet near a fixed coil to generate signal.
Mm-hmm.
The pros here: it is affordable, widely available. You can relatively easily replace the stylus, compatible with a lot of phono preamps. The cons are apparently, for a moving magnet, it is slightly less detailed than a moving cartridge. So it's considered best for beginners, mid-level, general listening. Now, the other style is moving coil. That's where the stylus moves the coil near a fixed magnet. So it's the opposite of moving magnet.
Mm-hmm.
Here it's saying excellent detail and fidelity, especially with high-end equipment. The stylus assembly is lighter, so the groove tracking is better. But the cons for a moving coil is that it is more expensive. The styluses, the styli, are often not replaceable. You have to replace the whole cartridge. And it often needs a special phono preamp or step-up transformer because the output can be lower and often is lower.
Mm-hmm.
So it's best for audiophiles and high-end systems. Now, as I said, not an expert. So anyone listening to this that wants to correct me, please do, because I want to know where I am wrong here. This is me gleaning from whack vinyl on Reddit, from Wikipedia, and as I said, from some AI prompts. But it sounds like, Locke, you were not expecting that. It sounds like I said something there that was a little different to what you thought.
The reference to moving cartridge I'd never heard before. So it said a moving cartridge, and I didn't know if that meant, like, I don't know what that meant.
I may have misspoken.
Okay.
So I was referring to moving magnet and moving coil. Did I say moving cartridge?
Yeah, you said it a second time
Oh
when you
my
were reading it
gosh.
out. So
I am so sorry.
Okay, so that's not a thing.
Do you want me to redo that, or is that too
No,
confusing?
that's fine. That's okay. We'll just deal with it here. So
all right. Well, so quick recap. According to my internet research, moving magnet is more affordable, more available, easily replaceable styli, compatible with a lot of phono preamps, but has slightly less detail. So it's better for newbies, mid-level, sort of general listening. And then that other type that is sort of the two that are most common is moving coil. And that is seen as having much better detail and fidelity, better for higher end gear, a lighter stylus, so that that allows the assembly to track the grooves better. But the con there is that it's more expensive. You often can't replace the stylus, and you often need some special phono preamps or a step-up transformer because the output is lower.
Okay.
So does that align with what you... I think I apologize
Yes.
for getting my taxonomy muddled there at the
No,
beginning.
that's okay. We are both learning in this space, and hopefully others are learning along with us. So I think being real with it's valuable.
Good.
So a couple of things fall out of that for me. I knew that there was moving magnet and moving coil, but I didn't
Okay.
know which was better and why. And it also, sorry, the other thing I just realized is that it brings up something that I probably misspoke in a previous episode where I said I think the idea of stylus and cartridge and needle are all kind of interchangeable. That what I'm hearing here is no, it's not. The
Right.
cartridge is the whole assembly,
Yep.
and in
Well,
some
no,
cases,
the cartridge is the chunk on the end of the arm. Because I
yes.
think
Sorry.
I've heard reference to assembly, which is cartridge plus
Oh, and
arm.
stylus and arm. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Okay. Let's not let's not try to break down the taxonomy today. The point is,
right.
don't trust your taxonomy from this podcast.
Yes,
learn
this is not the
learn along.
taxonomy podcast.
Correct. Learn along with us as we go. And as Nick said before, if you do have any insights you want to share about anything Nick's just said or anything I say during today, email askthegroovepod@gmail.com. And I just realized I said in the groove was the name of the podcast before when I did the intro because it's still written on the top of our recording software. I'm going to change that.
You tattooed it into your forehead. That
I
was the problem.
have. That was a mistake. I peaked too soon. So the other thing I was going to say was it's interesting hearing about the sensitivity and kind of resolution differences of those two types because it's quite similar to what I think about with microphones,
Right.
where you can use a condenser mic that is way more sensitive, but it tends to need a bunch more gain. It needs the extra 48-volt phantom power supply. Or you can go to a dynamic microphone, which often is less sensitive, less detailed, but it's kind of the easy option. You know, like if you're on stage as a rock musician screaming into a microphone, they're probably screaming into a dynamic microphone because they're just more versatile, robust, etc. So it sounds like I'm not saying they're the same because they're not, but there's some similarities there in the case that you've got two different choices. One's kind of easy, no fuss, no frills, but not quite as good. The other one's going to take a little bit more fiddling with, but could give you better results as a result. That's the
Yeah,
takeaway.
I think that's an interesting sort of correlation between the two. And then, of course, there's the stylus or
Mm,
the needle itself, and there are many different types or shapes or tip cut of
mm,
the stylus and of the needle. Some are more common than others, and often that's to do with the sort of the precision required to manufacture it and the materials involved as well. So the two most common are the spherical or conical tip and elliptical. And the spherical or conical tip is the sort of cheapest, most inexpensive. It's a round tip. It is sort of, DJs apparently use these ones a lot, and sort of, casual listening. And I think when I say DJs, we mean sort of more sort of, I want to say pedestrian. What's the word? Like,
like amateur or home
yeah,
DJ
maybe
type.
amateur, entry
Yep.
level home DJ stuff.
Yep.
Yep. And then the step up there is elliptical. And elliptical is more of an oval shaped tip. And it's going to have better contact with the groove walls, better sound quality. It's therefore going to be it is more expensive, and it's also more sensitive to alignment. So those are sort of the two sort of most common ones. And then you
Mm,
move up into the high end stuff. So you have hyper elliptical, shibata,
mm.
fine line contact, micro line, micro ridge, and I'm not even gonna
Yeah. Okay.
delve into that.
That's a whole
Oh,
nother.
you know what?
Mm,
Delve. Quick aside, and you have an AI story.
mm.
My quick AI story is: have you ever? Are you seeing prevalence of the word delve? Because I am seeing it everywhere, and I think it is a byproduct of
Of AI.
AI.
Ah,
I'm
interesting.
starting to at work. I'm getting to sort of read through submissions and papers for things, and a lot of them are including the word delve in ways that doesn't sort of jump out to me
That's
as sort of
interesting.
natural language. And yeah, so I asked Chad. I'm like, hey, what are some of the hallmarks of copy that has been modified or even written by AI? And Delve is one of the
Oh
top words.
wow. Okay, that's really interesting, and that makes sense because I found I use ChatGPT for coming up with ideas for video titles. So once I do the script, I
Yep.
put the script into ChatGPT and say, give me a bunch of titles that are going to make people want to click on my videos. And I had to specifically tell it to stop saying unveiled. It was this is unveiled, this
Right.
unveiled, that unveiled, the truth unveiled. And I'm like, enough. I don't want unveiled in any of your suggestions. So yeah, it's interesting that ChatGPT or any of the AIs, I think, have these tells, you could call it, that they've
Yep.
been used. And we'll do the funny story now. We're going way off audio topic, but I thought this was really cool. So my wife's using ChatGPT at the moment to plan and come up with sort of social media stuff for her podcast. She's just starting a new podcast. And she went to it and she said, I want you to do this, and this. I don't know the exact prompt she used or exactly what she asked for, but it basically came back and said, it's going to take me about 24 hours. And so she's like, okay, no problems at all. And then she'd go out and check on it. And it was taking a while for it to come back. And I said to her one night, I said, I don't think it should take that long. I said, I think ChatGPT has looked at how this works in the human world, which is that you'd go to somebody, they give you a quote for the amount of time it's going to take, and then they'd come back and they'd deliver the output. And anyway, sure enough, she went back and she looked. You know how if you use ChatGPT, it'll often give you the references where it's drawing information from. You can click on
Right.
the little
Yeah. Yeah.
footnote number thing.
Yep.
So she checked the references, and sure enough, one of the things it went to was how to let a client down gently. As in, if you're not going to deliver what they wanted you to deliver, or it's going to take you too long, how do you gently kind of let them down from the fact that you're not delivering what they asked for, which is nothing to
Oh
do with what
man.
she asked for, but it's obviously ChatGPT going, oh, well, this is what all of my scouring of internet articles and everything else says, that when someone asks you for something, you go back with a quote as to how long it's going to take. And this kind of work would take 24 hours. So it's just done that because that's what a human would do. And it's actually got no relevance to what ChatGPT needed to do for the task. So I thought that was really fascinating. And it goes to, for me, I had some people get really grumpy, or I shouldn't say some people. One person got really
Let's
grumpy with
name them.
me.
What's their name?
I actually don't know because it's all YouTube, it's YouTube comments, so I can't name and shame. It's just some handle, and I don't remember the handle. But this guy got, well, I'd say guy, this person got really grumpy with me because I'd used AI to generate a thumbnail image because it was a video that it was talking about computer software. I did a test to see which computer software gives you the best sound quality, if they make a difference at all. And so I didn't really have, normally I've got a product that I can highlight on the thumbnail, but I didn't have a product. I could have taken screenshots of the software on my screen, but that would have been a really uninteresting thumbnail that nobody would have clicked on. So I just used ChatGPT to generate an image, which was way better than anything I could have personally made. I'm not a graphic artist. And so I used it, and this person got really upset with me and was like, "Oh, it's so unethical that you're using AI to generate your thumbnails." And I think it's a really interesting topic because to me, I look at it and go, "Well, I'm not in a position with my channel, or for that matter with this podcast, if we ever use AI for this, neither of those two things make enough money. This one makes nothing, the podcast that is, but my channel doesn't make enough
I'm
money for
actually
me to."
paying you to do this podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Please talk to me once every fortnight.
Okay, go.
Yeah, like I couldn't afford to spend money to get an artist to generate the sort of content that ChatGPT did. And so the alternative to using ChatGPT for me is that I would then be using my own very rudimentary Photoshop skills to piece together some mishmash of stuff. And so it was a question for me of, do I have a subpar thumbnail or a good looking thumbnail? Either way, I'm not paying anybody to do it because that's not a choice that I have right now. And I think that's where the whole ethics question gets a bit shady because no one's losing money there because I'm not going to pay anybody money anyway. It's just a question of, can I get better quality output by using ChatGPT? And then we flip over to your experience, as in the whole Delve thing, and then Lisa, my wife's experience with the chat GPT just giving her a bogus time frame because it thought that's what it should do. It's, I don't know, I just think people are getting up in arms about a system that's still very, very broken in a number of ways. It's incredibly powerful in so many ways. And the fact that you could go to it, Nick, and say, "Hey, tell me where you make mistakes that gives away that it's you doing it," and it will tell you that.
Yep.
I think it's being overblown as to just how invasive, capable, taking over the world it is. And I'm not saying it won't ever go there. Maybe it will. But I think right now, I think it's overblown and people get up in arms too quickly and too easily. And then that's just taken us way off topic. So apologies for those that are
Well,
bored out of that.
I want to actually come to in the defense of the person that got cranky about the AI thumbnail just a little bit. So the way that my understanding that a lot of these AI models work is that they, we hear of training data sets,
Yep.
and with regards to sort of image creation, a part of how this works is it has this insanely massive reference library of images that have been identified and sort of keyword flagged, if you like, for what's in them and how good they are.
Mm.
And so when you say, "Hey, generate me an image of this," it's going to look into its massive library of images that match that prompt and those keywords, as well as sort of the quality markers that it has for what's considered good of this and what's considered bad, and then it's going to use some special software to then sort of merge all that together into something sort of semi new. And I think what is challenging here, and what maybe the person that was cranky about you was saying, is like, hey, while you were never planning to pay money to have an image generated, it's quite possible, sort of, that the image that ChatGPT generated for you was generated in, utilized training data that other artists create.
That's true.
And so it's possible that you were in some ways, I mean, it's extrapolated significantly here, but it's possible that you were the beneficiary of someone's work that was sort of considered or included in the sort of the training material that was used to create your image. And now the ethical question is, should those artists who generated the original images, should they somehow be either credited and or paid?
Mm.
Um, and I think what's really challenging about this is that we don't know how many images or parts of images were used
Mm.
to create your screenshot. It could have been literally millions. It could have been like a pixel here and a pixel there from thousands or millions of images that were then used to create your image. And in
Mm.
that case, what are you doing? Are you offering one millionth of an image credit, you know, to each of those artists? And maybe that's the right answer. I don't know. But I wonder maybe if that's where your commentator was coming from. And if
Possibly.
so, there's definitely something there in that pushback. Now, from an economics perspective, as you were saying, you never had budget to go and pay someone to do that.
Correct. Yeah.
And you don't know. It's completely opaque to you how that image gets generated and what it's sort of referencing from. So you really don't know. Are you actually sort of, I'll see air quotes, stealing from other artists? But I think it's an important question.
It is, and I like asking the question. I didn't like how it was presented in the comment, but I do like the question. The thing that it raises here, and we're gonna have to change the title of this podcast if we keep going on this topic for too long. the the thing that comes up for me though is that, okay, let's say I didn't use AI and I mashed something together myself.
Yeah.
You can guarantee that whatever I came up with would have been representative of some experience of browsing the internet, seeing thumbnails, and the imagery that I personally relate with the topic I was talking about because of everything I've seen in the past. So I'm stealing from all those references too, because all of the things that I've ever seen have informed what I then come up with. It's not it's not an entirely original thought, because I'm probably going to, whether I realize it or not, I'm going to take subconscious cues from stuff I've seen before. So that's, to me, I look at it and go, well, I'm stealing then, and I need to pay those people for their work because it's informed. And yeah, and let's bring it back to audio. Music's the same. Like, so many artists take inspiration, and some go too far, and I agree with them having to pay royalties when it's just a flat out copy, or it's so close that it's a, hey, you've just taken that riff and used it as your own. That I think they should be paying the artist. But how many artists have taken inspiration from the Beatles or inspiration from somebody else. And it's to me, it's where this all gets really grey. And that was my answer to this comment on YouTube, was it's just a really grey area. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't worry about the ethics in this thing. We absolutely should, but it's such a grey area.
There's a great YouTuber who I've only just found, and I'm sure I'm very, very slow to discover this person, but Pat Finity, and they do a series called "Why This Song Stinks." Have you
Oh
seen this?
yeah, I haven't. Sounds good though.
I'm going to send it to you. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. It's very tongue in cheek, but it's incredibly well done, incredibly
Okay.
well researched. And the very first one that I saw was a breakdown of Danny California by Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Mm-hmm.
And turns out there's a lot of, let's say, inspirational material that is very obvious when it gets pointed out.
Yep.
And you could argue that the song is really quite derivative of 3, if not 4 other, especially 2 incredibly well-known songs. Anyway, the reason that I sort of bring it up, and then at the very end, he then says, like, come on, guys, here's how you could have put a little bit more effort into it and actually created sort of a more interesting and unique song that was within your sound. And he basically like re-records the whole song.
Oh, how cool.
And does it like, this is how it should have been done if the Chili Peppers were actually, not being lazy. I'm semi-quoting here. Anyway, very, very cool. But yeah, it's it's when an art, when you hear a song, and you go, oh my gosh, those same 3 chords or 4 chords are the same key, the same time signature, the almost the same rhythm. They just have a slightly different melody on top. Yeah, I remember I hear those kind of songs all the time, and I'm going, how do you get away with that? Anyway, what are we talking about?
We were talking about cartridges, styluses. So we should come back around to that. I think we've said what we need to say about AI. So back to cartridge and stylus. With a turntable like yours, and I'm going to assume it's probably like the one that I reviewed, the FiiO TT13. So with your Audio Technica or my FiiO turntable, well, let's not confuse things because we don't know about the FiiO. You've only researched it for yours. What could you plug into your turntable in terms of cartridges / styli? Did you work that out?
Well, yes. So I live in a part of the world where I can get like same day Amazon Prime, which is both awesome, but also it's
very dangerous.
So the carbon footprint and financial risk is significant. I don't know. Maybe the carbon footprint's not that bad. They have like electric trucks and anyway. That's a different podcast. But all of the Audio Technica AT-VM95 series cartridges are available very easily for me to procure. I literally could hit this button here and it'll be here tomorrow between 4 and 8 a.m. if I wanted to. And basically I've been sort of looking at because my record player is Audio Technica, I feel like I'm going to start, or at least from a research perspective, I'm going to look at Audio Technica first because at least I know it'll be compatible.
And they have a fantastic reputation, so why not?
And they do. And so that's currently where I am right now. And the link that I sent to you there was to the AT-VM95E, which is a dual moving magnet cartridge with a 0.3 by 0.7 mil elliptical stylus. And I can get that for $69. That feels like it's a good next step for me.
Yeah, it does.
What I don't know though, and I know I can dig in more, and there'll be folks out there that will have done reviews before me, is how do I measure I don't know what cartridge and stylus are currently in the factory. When you get this record player from Audio Technica, what's in the box? Because when I opened it, the cartridge was already assembled. Like, everything was assembled. I didn't have to do anything. I literally just plugged in the power and plugged in the already connected RCA cables. So I didn't have to do any assembly. So I didn't sort of think of it as a set of parts. And so question number one is, because you made a really good point when a couple episodes back when I was talking about how when I switched from the phono stage to the line out, and then changed from the phono input to the auxiliary line in on my amp, how that sort of opened up the sound, and it just, the clouds parted and the birds sang. And a big part of that is that you said, well, the Audio Technica probably has a higher quality phono stage preamp built into it, because it is a record player by a good, reputable company. So it would make sense that they would invest in putting a good quality phono preamp into it. Whereas my amplifier, my Dayton HTA 100, it has a phono input, but it's probably going to, when they're building that thing, they're probably going to assume that only a fraction of their customers are going to use it. So they're probably not spending as much, a higher percentage of their budget in the actual parts that they're purchasing to make that thing. And so that was a really interesting sort of observation that you had there, which really sort of changed things for me. And so here I'm looking at this and I'm like, $69. Okay, so I pay $69. So Amazon gets, I don't know, $10, and like if I think about like what's Audio Technica's cost to produce this, and maybe it's a quarter. I don't know. Maybe it's
probably
half.
$15-$20 of that, perhaps.
Now, is there $15-$20 worth of stylus and cartridge in the box from this record player that I've bought? And then therefore, do I really need to spend more like $100 or $120 to actually get a better quality product and therefore a better sort of experience?
Do you recall off the top of your head what your Audio Technica model number was? Was it the 120 or one of the different ones?
It was the ATL P60 USB.
Because what I'm thinking is it really comes down to, like you said, what's in it, and that should be visible or printed somewhere. It's got a dual moving magnet phono cartridge already. It's got the ATN 3600L is the standard cartridge in there.
And so what is that? Like how do I compare that to, I can tell you now. Okay, so I just pumped. I just plugged that
whipped out.
I just whipped it out. And it says it's $26 to buy a replacement. And it's conical.
Conical rather than
it's 0.6. Okay, so all right. So it is an inferior cartridge compared to
the one that you found is going to be, it's actually a really logical step up. And so this is probably a good learning option for people to talk about. One of the biggest lessons I ever got from audio as I was kind of getting involved and getting into it, Dan Schmolly from Bottlehead, who make amazing DIY tube amps and headphone amps, and preamps for that matter. He has always had the recommendation, let's call it, that it's really good to step through the changes you make gradually, because then you get to understand exactly what they do. He said the worst thing you can do, and he was talking from a DIY perspective, so there were a few angles to it. One of them was he was saying, if you change 5 things at once and it doesn't work afterwards, you don't know which of those 5 things broke it. But also what he was saying is if you change 5 things at once, you don't know which thing influenced the sound in which way. And so his recommendation is just go gradually, take your time, one step at a time. And so I think this is a really fantastic way for you to spend, $50-$60 and see, okay, what is the difference if I go to a slightly higher quality needle or cartridge, I should say altogether, that's conical and maybe is slightly, I don't remember the dimensions, but it might also be a slightly finer tip dimension. What does that do for the sound? And therefore you get a really good sense there of, do you want to dive deeper down that path? Is that valid and worthy for you to keep going down that path? Or do you plug that in and go, okay, it maybe made a slight difference, but it's not enough that I want to invest any more money here. So where do I turn next? It's a really great way to kind of isolate the variables, if you like.
Well, with that recommendation, I'm gonna hit purchase. I'm gonna get this
live on the podcast. And you heard it here, folks.
And that then gives me some good homework for the next episode.
Yeah,
because this thing's gonna arrive tomorrow morning.
Awesome.
And I'll go through the process of getting it installed, and I'll try and A/B test it with a couple of records.
Yeah.
So that's great advice. So I sort of recap of what we did here, and I'm sort of kicking myself I didn't do it before we came on air, is that, it's obvious you need to know what you have, right?
Yes.
And so I had, coming into this episode, I was like, I don't know what I have, and I don't even know if I can find out what I have. Like, I'm sure there are a lot of audiophiles out there that have done reviews of this particular record player out of the box and could sort of comment on it. But it was you dug into the digital manual, found the product number, we looked it up, and was
And
able to find yes, it is a conical tip.
Pro tip here: Amazon's the worst place to find information about products. The Amazon website interface is horrendous for specifications and information. You can sometimes find it, and I just did. But what I find is when I want to know if I'm doing a review of a product and I want to really understand it, the best place to go is either to the manufacturer website or a dedicated retailer that does that sort of product. So in this case, an audio retailer, because the Amazon website has been set up for every product ever made, every type of product ever made, and therefore it doesn't have particularly good breakdown of specifications and information. And so you can waste a lot of time searching on Amazon. Don't search for specs and information on Amazon. Find out about it somewhere else and then go buy it on Amazon if you want to use Amazon.
I love it.
So we've dug in, we found out what you had.
Yeah. And then, so I found out that what shipped with it was a conical or a spherical tip. So first and foremost, I'm upgrading the tip.
Yes.
So I'm going from a spherical or a conical to elliptical. And so according to what I've learned, it's going to be a better quality sound. There's going to be better contact with the walls, the groove walls on the record, and that's going to give me better sound quality. It's going to be a little bit more sensitive to alignment, so I need to obviously make sure that my alignment is good.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we can delve into that on another episode. That was just sort of, I think that was the missing piece for me, is like, I don't want to spend $75 and 60, $69, whatever it is, and find out that it's basically it's basically what's already in the box.
Yep.
So that was good. All right. I got something out of this episode.
Brilliant. Hopefully lots of people
and that was,
did
and
too.
we were going to cover like 3 or 4 different topics. You're going to talk about the email that came into the inbox?
Yeah, well, I think what we'll do, let's talk about the email, then we'll close off the email, and then we'll save the tariff conversation for another episode, because who knows where that will lead us.
I was going to say, like, it's actually a bit dangerous talking about tariffs, because I saw one tweet today that sort of said in the space of 8 hours that the tariffs were off. Then not only were they back on, they were increased, then they're actually decreased, then they're off, and then they were back on again. Yep. So it's almost silly for us to even try and comment on it, other than to say, I'm pretty sure prices are just going up anyway.
Yeah, and it's actually the uncertainty that I want to talk about and the impact that's having on companies. So I think it's worth talking about, but it's going to be talking about it in the sense that we have no answers, and we're not going to have any answers until there's a level of consistency in the tariffs, what's been set, how long has it been set for, who's it set against, how are other countries responding to those tariffs. So there's a lot of stuff that's to be unpacked there. But let's go and have a quick chat about this email. And so for those that want to get in on the chat, it's askthegroovepod@gmail.com. And David is our first ever emailer, so thank you, David. And he said that he's so glad we got an email address because he's been going crazy not being able to contact us. And so he's referring to the episode where we touched on the idea of buying separate components versus having everything bundled into one box. So I think that probably came up in the episode where we spoke about having a separate phono stage compared to it being built into your data amp, Nick. And he was concerned that we didn't mention the problem with having an all-in-one, where if one part of it stops working, your entire system is stuffed. And I think it's a fair point. So I did want to mention it briefly. So what he's getting at there is, if you've bought a product like Nick's, where it's got a USB DAC, it's got a headphone output, it's got speaker outputs, it's got a phono preamplifier in it, and of course it is an amplifier. If, let's say, Nick didn't have a turntable with a good phono stage, and what it seems Nick discovered a couple of episodes back was that the phono stage in the Dayton is actually a bit balked. It seems like it's got a channel balance issue. I don't know if you got to the bottom of that or if you've just decided not to bother because the Audio-Technica one's clearly better. But that's an example where if you didn't have a turntable with a phono preamp that was as good or better, and that phono stage within your Dayton amp has died, either it's got to go back for warranty repairs and then you've got no amp, or you're stuck with a device that can't do what you need it to do. And that's definitely an argument for separates. So I think it is a fair point there from David that it's something to consider when you're buying an all-in-one or a multi-purpose device, that you've got more individual components to go wrong, which isn't to say they're more likely to go wrong, but when they go wrong, the whole device is now less valuable. it can do less, it maybe is completely broken for what you needed it for. The counter argument to that, though, that I think is worth bringing up is that sometimes it's about space as much as it's about space and cables and clutter, as it is about everything else. So, like, I've got here to review at the moment, Lumen Audio, who makes sort of high-end streamers, have just sent me what they call their P1 Mini. And this thing is a DAC, a streamer, and a preamp that's all in one chassis. It's not something I would personally choose to use because of the arguments that have been put forward in the email from David. But I can absolutely see, looking at this device, why some people would go, that's the only box I need in my living room. And then I can plug that into my TV. I can plug that into because it's got HDMI and stuff like that. So I can plug that into my TV for stereo sound. I can send the sound out from that to a power amp or a pair of active speakers, and there is nothing else I need in my living room. So I see the value in products like that, but it is something that people need to weigh up. Is, are you happy to have the convenience of a single box, knowing that if the DAC dies in the Lumen P1 Mini, not saying that it would because they're very reliable and really high quality devices, but if it did, that device, that whole thing, the preamp is no good to you anymore, the streamer's no good to you anymore, it's absolutely dead in the water. That's something that people need to consider. So I think it's valid. Nick, thoughts?
Definitely valid. I feel like it's maybe a question for me. I went two ways. One, I went, oh wow, I really want to know how some of these multifunction devices are actually constructed. So, for example, in my amp, my Dayton Audio HT100, whatever it is the power supply? Are all the individual sort of componentry that's inside of it? Are they all? I assume it's one power supply feeding everything, but how is that power then sort of sent to each of the individual components? Is it in series? Is it in parallel? Is there any effort to sort of clean up and try and sort of filter out some noise? And I don't know, right? And so part of that is like, when you have your own, when the components are separate, then you get the ability in some ways to have much more. I think you said this as well, but I'm sort of just processing it in real time. You get to have control to understand what the individual components are in terms of their quality and reputation. You get to control how they are connected to each other, and if something does fail, then it's just a piece of the chain that you can in theory sort of replace or swap out. However, having said that, one thing that I don't love about the idea of going to separate components is the fact that, okay, so now I do have to both invest money but also time and energy in how am I going to connect them. So if I think about the phono preamp that's built into my record player, is, I assume, so physically close to the output from the cartridge that that distance is somewhat negligible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I take that phono preamp out or don't use what's built in, now I have to make sure that I have a good quality set of cables or whatever it needs to be in order to connect them. And there's both cost involved in that, but also sort of time and energy, right? Like, I need to sort of think about how do I want to do this and how do I want to invest in that. Part of me thinks that when you put multiple components together inside of one box, if it's a good quality manufacturer that is using high quality componentry and their standards are very high and their QA is very high, I like to think that getting those individual components really, really, really close to each other, so that as the signal moves from one component to the other, there's less loss, less noise. I know it's not as simple as that, because now noise actually can come in because one component can sort of bleed over and pollute the other one. That's sort of where I'm going. I'm actually thinking less about failure and thinking more about, I like the idea of getting as many components as possible as close to each other, so you have as less a physical distance as possible that you have to traverse to send signal from one to the other. but it's a great question, and
Yeah.
I don't know. Was an opinion shared, or was it just a question to us?
No, it was more just David sharing his opinion that he what I took from it is he likes to use separates because of the risk of failure. It was more of a statement of his preference.
Well, you know
And
what I would love to know is how often does something fail? Like, so how often
okay,
do
I was
you
going to
have
talk about
something
that.
fail? Like when you're doing your testing and doing your reviews.
I have had in the entire time I've been reviewing, which for those who aren't familiar would be the
Like
channel.
65 years? Because you're in your mid 80s now.
Mid 80s now, yeah. Actually,
Yeah.
funny story. My wife and I aren't telling our son how old we are. We're keeping him in the
Why is
dark about how
that?
old we are. Just I don't know why. Lisa
Just
Lisa
for
decided
fun.
she wanted to, and so we've kept it going. So when he says, "Daddy, how old's Mummy?" I go, "Nobody knows." So,
Scientists are trying to figure that question
that's
out.
right. So he really pushed us the other day for it, and so we've told him that once we got to 100, we stopped counting. So we're something over 100. We're not quite sure what. So anyway,
That's
coming back
awesome.
to the question. So I've been running the YouTube channel for about 6 years, something like that. The early days were a bit sporadic, so let's call it 5 years of YouTube reviews. And then before that, I used to write reviews on my written blog, and even HeadFi before that.
And then
It,
before that, you were a professional installer of
well, yeah, once upon a
of
time
a
of car audio, yeah,
yeah, and you know I would count all that too, right? Like how often are you installing brand new
yeah, good
things
point.
and something fails during installation or
And
out of
it's
the box? Anyway,
very,
but like
very, very rare is the answer. So in
yeah, I was gonna say
all
that's what I
all
would
of
have
that
thought.
time, I have had. So I'll just talk about my time as a reviewer because I can't talk about people like I never installed a head unit in a car that failed. Put it that way. That's a zero failure
You have a
situation.
100% success rate.
Yes, which has got nothing to do with me because I didn't make the units.
You should still claim
However,
it though. Put that on
I
your
should, I
LinkedIn
should.
profile.
Yeah, that's right. What I can say though is that in all the time reviewing gear, I have had one, two, three headphones fail. One of which was an active like powered headphone. It was a wireless one. So in terms of electronic devices failing, so I'm actually going to take the headphones out of that because they're not an electronic device that could be built into anything else. But the electronics in that one wireless headphone failed. I've had another device that got killed by a dodgy headphone cable being plugged into it. It blew the output stage of that, which was no fault of the product. And I've got a product here right now. It's a power amplifier that keeps triggering its safety protection and switching itself off, and I can't work out why. So I don't know if it's faulty. I've actually got another one on the way, and I'm going to see if both of them behave the same. It could be something in my system. Sometimes devices that don't use a ground circuit. So if you have a product that plugs in with a little, the DC barrel connectors, the little round connectors, like often used to go into laptops before they used USB-C, often with those devices, if you touch them, you'll feel a bit of a zing coming off them, or if you touch the cables coming out the back, like the RCA or the XLR cables, you'll often feel a bit of a zing from them. I don't know if it's that kind of residual current or whatever's going on from that zing that's triggering this amplifier. So I need to play around with it and try a bunch of different things to see if it's faulty or not. But that will give you an idea. In all the years that I've been reviewing, one product has flat out failed, and the others have all been influenced or potentially influenced by things around them. Which is not to say that things don't die. Things absolutely. Oh, I lie. I had one other absolute flat out dead on arrival. There was a faulty volume controller chip in one of them, and no matter what I did with the volume control, nothing happened. But that's the extent of failures. So things do fail. It does happen more often than not when things aren't working. My experience from talking to people, having it happen to me when I've sold stuff on eBay that I know was working, and then somebody gets it and says it's not working, and they send it back to me, and I plug it in and it works fine. 9 times out of 10, it's actually user error or damage caused by an external factor, power surge, plugging in something that was faulty, like that dodgy cable that short circuited the output stage on that one I talked about. It's very rare these days that things actually die. Like the companies that make all of the chips that go into these products, the companies that make the circuit boards and put all of those chips on the circuit boards are so well practiced at this that failure rates are pretty low. They're not non-existent, but they're pretty low these days. And I would say things like speakers and headphones where there's moving parts are probably more at risk of failure than the solid state devices. And tubes as well would be another one that's a bit more fragile, but they're also replaceable, the tubes. So I think failure rates are actually much lower than we should be too worried about. And on that note, which sorry, and if David's listening to this and hopefully hasn't just switched off and thinks I'm completely devaluing his comment, I get where he's coming from, and I get why people would be concerned about it, because it is, if you're making a significant investment and it does fail, your entire investment has to be redone. And so if you've paid $3,000 for an all-in-one device when you could have bought three $1,000 devices to do the same thing, having to replace the full $3,000 instead of just a $1,000 unit, I get it. I totally get that. So I'm not disregarding David's comments. But the other thing that's really interesting, I used to always recommend against all-in-ones from a performance point of view, because once upon a time, if you were to spend, let's use the $3,000 number, if you were to spend $3,000 on an all-in-one and you were to spend the equivalent amount of money, let's say it's just a DAC and an amp. If you were to spend $1,500 on a DAC and $1,500 on an amp, and then you'd probably have to spend a little bit of money on some decent cables, that stack, once upon a time, guaranteed would have smashed the all-in-one. It wouldn't have been close. For all the reasons you just said, Nick, of power supply issues, noise in the system. What I'm finding now, I've reviewed in the last 6 to 12 months, I've reviewed about 3, 4, 5 all-in-one units that are absolutely as good as anything I can put together as a set of separates. So things have changed there. There's new technologies in power supply regulation to clean up power supplies and to make sure that you're not getting any issues with noise. If you've got a DAC and an amp in the same system using the same power supply, they can customize and clean up the power for both of them really effectively now. It's not a guarantee that every all-in-one is as good as every set of equivalent separates, but it's absolutely possible now to match the performance of an all-in-one and the performance of separates. So that, even that concern for me is out the window now, and I'm using right now in front of me for this podcast, I'm using an all-in-one that I reviewed recently, which is a streamer, it's a DAC, it's a headphone amp, and it's a preamp. It's like $800 and it's as good as if I get a DAC for $800 that doesn't do any of those things. This little FiiO unit that I'm currently using still sounds as good, and yet it does all those extra things. So the world has completely changed in that regard, and I think it's much more now a question of what do you want rather than which one is best necessarily. There will be better ones and worse ones. That's going to be normal, but it's now a question of preferences. What do you want? And then find the best one of what you want rather than feel like you have to go down the path of separates.
I think this would be too long a conversation, but I think as you were saying that, my two thoughts were, I wonder, is that because the manufacturing standards have increased, and the quality of the componentry has increased, or is it because a lot of individual components have actually been merged together in a sense that, and it happens a lot with, in the evolution of silicon in computing, that, if you look at older computers, a lot of the arithmetic logic unit used to be completely separate from the other part of the computational memory address read. I'm making that up now, right? But over time, as we work out how to miniaturize things, we also work out how to sort of integrate them together. And so I wonder how much of that is because we're getting better. We, being the human race and people who manufacture equipment, are getting better at making stuff more, to a higher degree of quality with higher QA. And or is it because some of these parts and individual components are actually being sort of merged together into a single thing, and so therefore it works more efficiently and fails less?
Yeah, it's probably all of the above is the simple answer to it.
And then I realized too that David was probably referring maybe I assume David actually was probably referring to less about individual components failing, out of the blue, and more like, oh, my kid came in and threw a glass of orange juice
That's
at
a really
the
good point.
stereo and it blew up. Or we had a massive power surge because of a lightning storm, or water damage. That's probably the scenario where stuff fails because some external third party or thing happens to it that's actually no fault of the manufacturer or no fault of the actual device itself. And so that's probably a better scenario that we should have litigated that one a bit more. But it's a great question. Oh my gosh. And I'm thinking about it now because
I think what you just said, Nick, sorry, I just want to jump in. I think what you just said really cracks it open, which is it doesn't actually matter why the thing dies. It could be user error, it could be children, pets, whatever. The reality is if it dies, you are up for more money than if you had bought equivalent separates. That is an absolute fact of the matter. There's no getting around that. So kids, pets, freaks of nature, whatever happens, freaks of nature not being referring to kids and pets, but referring to like acts of nature and floods and storms and power surges and stuff. They're all factors that come into it, and anything that breaks the unit, you've got to replace it. Sorry, Nick, I cut you off.
I don't remember.
Okay. Well, I think we've probably prattled on for long enough anyway, so it's probably a good place to wrap it up until the next episode. So don't forget, everyone, askthegroovepod@gmail.com if you want us to spend inordinate amounts of time talking about the ins and outs of questions that you would have to ask us, or thoughts and opinions, as David shared. So next episode, Nick, you're going to tell us all about your moving magnet cartridge that you've just ordered.
I am, and yes, and Lachlan, sorry, I just realised, should we definitively give our perspective and our position on David's question? Integrated versus separate?
I don't think we should, because I think it changes every day. Not every day, but it can change, and I think it's so
good.
Situational.
I'm going to say integrated.
You're going to say integrated, are you? Okay. I'm glad we reached that agreement.
No, I wasn't agreeing for you.
No. I meant agreement on whether we were going to be definitive or not.
No, I know. Sorry. Yes.
Here I am, fence-sitting to the best of my ability.
I was being democratic, and I was like, you know what? No, I'm David. Thank you so much for your email.
So you're all integrated, are you?
I'm on the integrated fence at this point.
Okay.
And we'll see if, as we journey along this, whether Lachlan can kick me off.
So I'm on the separate side of it, but only because I think it gives you more versatility. One of the things we didn't just discuss in that conversation, and I'm not going to go into depth, it probably doesn't need too much explanation anyway, is that forgetting failures, forgetting all that stuff, the other beauty of separates is that if you suddenly go, you know what, I want to see what a better phono stage is going to do, go buy a better phono stage. You're not replacing your entire system. Now, in your case, Nick, you could do that anyway because you're not limited. But that's an example. Or DAC, I want to go buy a better DAC. Go buy a better DAC. That's where I also think separates I still lean to slightly. But as I said, if you need less space, less cables, and convenience, I still think all-in-ones are fantastic. So for me, it's situational. But if there's no limitations situationally speaking, I'm a separates person.
Love it.
There we go. Bombshell. So let's leave it there. Nick, you're going to tell us about your experience with the moving magnet cartridge next time. I'm going to pick up the tariff conversation then. The reason, just to let people know where that's coming from, there was some really interesting news came out from FiiO, who is a Chinese manufacturer of fantastic audio gear. They put out a public statement about what the tariffs are meaning for them and what it's then going to mean for customers. And I think it's an interesting conversation to have for people to just be aware of where this is all leading us potentially, and what it might mean for us as audio enthusiasts that want to buy audio gear that may be made outside of the USA and or made with parts from outside of the USA. So we'll talk about that next episode and chat to everyone then.
And stay in the pod. No, stay in the groove. What are we saying?
Stay in the groove.
We'll see you next time in the groove.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Groove Pod. Until next time, happy listening, and we hope you'll join us again.